So hello everyone, it's Ashutosh Pandey again, and as promised, we are starting now today our first public administration lecture into the series of public administration conceptual classes that we had promised in the introduction video. But before actually we start with the class, I would just give you a very brief introduction regarding what we are going to do here in this prodigy, the educational endeavor that we have started. Fine. So for 45 days, like we have started with the Prodigy 45, for 45 days, we'll have, there's a calendar given. Fine. So the classes would be run on the particular lines, the dates as decided. Fine. Every day at a particular time, we'll be uploading videos related to certain classes, public administration, ethics, essay, CSAT, current affairs, and maybe or technical areas, right? So it can be environment, biodiversity, science tech, and many other areas pertaining to general studies, governance, polity, constitution, constitutional, debates and discussions. So there can be variety of content that will be available in these 45 days to you. The general aim of this 45 is what? To make the students oriented to the conceptual aspects of UPSC of various domains. Meanwhile, because we all are stuck at different places, but our team is working together tirelessly right now to make things happen for you. So no doubt there can be some technological drawbacks in terms of our presentation or whatever, but the technology is a means and not an end. Fine. Technology is the boat and not the river. It should not become the limitation for us. So whatever modes be, we'll be coming with the knowledge, the content, fine. Because I believe content is the champion. Content is the actually requirement. Whatever happens, rest of that can be definitely cosmetically treated, to give you a very good feel. But then unless there is a substance in what we are doing, right? So we'll be coming with a variety of lectures and topics, right? Starting with public administration. Public administration, I'll be talking to you about conceptual aspects of public administration beginning today. Today is the introduction part of public administration, where we'll be talking about public administration in general. Right? There are lots of students who had lots of queries coming to me personally on my WhatsApp and likewise email, who are asking about, so what to study in public administration, what to do about public administration, right? And why should we take public administration as an optional, or whether for that matter any optional. And we are going after a full-fledged general studies program also over the time, not now. Obviously you'll come to know about it over the time. Telegram channels, Facebook, our website will be coming up, right? So why public administration? Let us start with that. That will be the first question we'll ask. What exactly should be the approach to understand or study an optional, right? Now see what has been the Macaulay report. If you have heard of the Macaulay report, 1853-54, the benchmark for the civil services in this country, basically the British India. So simultaneously reforms were done in UK as well as India based on the Macaulay report. Now there was a parallelly Northcote-Trevelyan report, 1837, somewhere, 39, 37. So that Northcote-Trevelyan report actually vouched for a strong foundation of civil services, right? Now that civil services obviously was not for the politico-administrative structure that we are seeing today. That civil services was basically the servants of the company, the East India Company, right? The East India Company, you must be knowing what it was. It had the purpose, a series of bureaucratic hierarchy it had, factors, merchants, writers, and likewise. Then came administrators, deputy administrators, senior administrators, and likewise. Now, if you understand the nature, the very essence of civil services, so it starts from there. And this is what we have been continuing today also, right? In no way we are very different from that civil services. In terms of purpose, yes, we have changed. but not at all in terms of the structure, the essence, the bone, the framework that is there, almost same, right? More or less, mentality also remains the same. So Macaulay basically laid the foundation for a scholastic nature of examination which requires an in-depth study, right, of various humanities, liberal arts. Uh, they wanted a kind of descriptive paper trying to understand the length and breadth, the understanding of a particular person. Now, why they wanted descriptive paper? Obviously, there are two reasons. One, when you are writing a descriptive answer, right, the first thing that is tested is your expression, right, your ability to put things in black and white, where you are able to convey, right, exactly what has been asked to you. You are able to convey it, and that mode of conveying, the way of conveying, okay, reflects a major aspect of your personality, right? So if I have to define why I want to become a civil servant, it is quite obvious that I will say, okay, I want to serve my country, I want to serve my society, right? I want to serve this, I want to do this. Now, this answer obviously does not reflect your personality. It only reflects your intention or something that you're presenting to me, right? So you can say when we write things, because we cannot, mug up everything and write it. So when we're describing something, when we are, elaborating something, a part of our personality is reflected, at least somewhere it will be visible, right? Now that is one aspect. The second aspect is that the learning, the memory, right? If you have to elaborate facts, if you put facts on paper, obviously you need to memorize them, you need to remember them, you need to have a chronological arrangement of that in your, mind, somewhere in your, understanding of that particular area. You have to somewhere put those facts, right, and you have to remember. So see, knowledge, that is the information part, and other was the descriptive part of your personality that will be reflected, right? Now they basically wanted this, and that is why they put a lot of liberal arts, humanities, pro humanities paper, right? Training people. Now obviously Macaulay, or for that matter, when we talk about Cornwallis Code and Cornwallis comes, and Wellesley brings the reforms. So there are so many things which are changing, but they basically wanted what? They wanted the sophisticated clerks, okay, clerks, babus working for the Britishers, right? Now, understand the nature. So when we think of an optional, we have to understand that the optional and why the optional is there. Right? So optional is there obviously to test your memory, right? Your analytical skills, how you can comprehend the theoretical aspect, the theories, can you reproduce them properly, right? Third is your descriptive, the way of describing certain things, right? Fourth is obviously your range of, understanding of various topics and how you're able to link these topics. So with that regard, every optional has its own utility, uniqueness. Public administration, by the virtue of being, a kind of new subject, by virtue of being just 100, years old, a subject, and by virtue of being very relevant to what you're going to do. It is basically the study of what you're going to do. So in that regard, the subject became very popular. Subject was very popular. It is still very popular, no doubt, amongst engineers, technocrats, people coming from different backgrounds, who do not have a burden of humanities, who do not have, a formal education in liberal arts. They all MBAs, engineers, doctors, even people from economics background, people from, technological background. They all feel like, taking a public administration. Public administration has an uncanny, resemblance to what we see, what we do in our daily lives, right? So our first, this part is a very basic introduction. I'm talking about that. Why optional? Optional. The choice of optional somewhere also reflects, fine, your innate nature, your ability, and the kind of content you want to study and read, right? The second, people say, is about interest. Now, obviously, we don't know the interest. Interest is something that can be very momentary. It can be asked, it can be seen, it can be, realized for a few days, and then we can lose the interest. Now, that is not the interest. When we say interest, there is something like a special area of interest. So, if you're specially, or if you want actually to understand that what is my special area of interest, then probably you'll have to spend years and years in that area. Right? So let us talk about, in that sense, that public administration uh, is an interesting area, okay, which helps you know certain things, some certain out of the box things, certain things that you see every day, uh, activities, uh, legalities, technical aspects that the government is going to do, and, and eventually you are going to be part of that. So public administration in that regard is quite a flamboyant subject. Fine, it has, you know, a lot of sophistication in terms of understanding. It requires a good vocabulary, though it can be simplified. Fine, it should not be a limitation for a subject or a person coming from the rural background or a person who has not studied something like that. It's not like that. This is a myth that we say that it requires a lot of, yes, it is no vocabulary dominated, but that is something that you understand. Fine, if you have to call a file, you'll call it a file. If you want to indicate something as bureaucracy, you'll call it bureaucracy. There's some nothing like that. You need to remember an Oxford dictionary for that. Fine, so you kindly understand that way. Right? So we'll have public administration as an option is a very, you know, emerging discipline. It is an emerging area. It is quite popular, and UPSC has rewarded public administration over the time. People have scored very well marks. I was one of them who scored good marks, and there were so many students, so many friends, so many students whom we have taught over the time. They've scored very good marks. Right? Yes, from 2013 to 2016, or you can say 12 to 16, was the phase when UPSC basically, yes, punished public administration. Now, why was that? There were so many factors. And the factor cannot be simply that it is bad. That is why it is being punished. Okay, there were a lot of factors. The number of students increasing in public administration, right? Then you can say that as it is a very dynamic subject, right? Most of the people focusing only on the static portion of public administration, mugging theories, knowing names, and then writing them, and assuming that that is a good answer. It is not so. Public administration is a practical subject. If I have to understand that what is the role of district magistrate today, right, in lockdown, in issuing a pass, let us simplify that, right? So district magistrate is not just a legal authority representing the government in the state. District magistrate is also a thinking position in the government. It has a decision making role, and his decisions will reflect the government decisions, and it will not reflect only the government decision in terms of the citizens who are viewing district collector, but also it will also reflect, okay, within the government itself, that what decision the district collector takes, so how the government itself is able to, you know, run or, you know, act as per that decision. So the stability and the existence of the government at a particular point of time in such kind of circumstances depends upon the collector's decision, or an SP, right? Or the role of police in containing the so-called, you know, migrant workers or whatever. So you have to understand that aspect, right? The role of NDMA, Disaster Management Act, right, and the role of District Collector in Disaster Management Act. Why? Why Pandemic Act, and why the Act for Pandemic? Why? So see, administration is about all about doing things and then knowing them. That yes, whatever we are doing, okay, has a very pertinent impact, very huge impact on how the society is going to shape itself over the time, right? So you can say public administration is a very interesting area, right? Now, theoretically, when we want to define public administration and its domain of study, because in these lectures, right, we are more focused on the story of PubAd, right? PubAd as a folklore, PubAd as something, okay, that you can understand in that way, that Dadi Nani stories that you were reading. Okay, that is what PubAd should be. And it has become more of a elite subject. Right? It has become more of a theorist, you know, experiment, social experiment, okay, studying theorists and thinking of a research knowledge. It is not research knowledge. It is what we do, what we see every day. Fine. So you can understand that way that public administration is a wide domain of study. Okay. Specifically, when we think of UPSC syllabus, the biggest drawback is that we get stuck to those syllabus, those points, those aspects. Introduction to the study of PubAd, right? Meaning, scope, and definition of public administration. Now, when we read Mohit Bhattacharya, right? When we read Nicholas Henry, right? When we read Stillman, for example, or when we read Negro and Negro, right? Or Demock and Coing, or let us say when we talk about Burrell and Morgan, if we see them, when we think of these people, right? For them, the meaning, scope, and definition of public administration seems to be highly anarchic. They are not happy with one definition, right? Because one definition cannot define public administration. Right? Today it's law and order, tomorrow it's development, and day after tomorrow it's justice, and after that it is, let us say, the management of communalism, the management of riots, the restriction on illicit selling of liquor, smuggling, and also, can you imagine? Is there any one predefined strategy or method to do all these things? It's not as simple as going into a kitchen, making a roti. So there's a defined procedure. Even if, yeah, in lockdown, most of us might have learned it, fine. So we never knew about it, but now we have also learned it. But there is a standard procedure, a skill which can be learned. Obviously, that work is very tiring and very it demands a lot of patience. Okay, salute to all the females. But the logic is that if we have to learn making a chapati, it is a skill. We learn it. Fine. But if we have to understand that how to distribute this chapati, if I want to know how to distribute this chapati, if we have less food and we have more people, then you require some acumen. You require some convincing to be done, right? So you can understand when we think of these authors, the logic of public administration is totally changed. Obviously, most of these authors, L.D. White, Waldo, Demock, Coing, Mosher, then your Nicholas Henry, and even Mohit Bhattacharya, they have all come from more of the Western tradition. Even the Mohit Bhattacharya is an Indian writer, but no doubt all his concepts, his framework, his knowledge has been mostly borrowed from the Western perspectives. But now when you think of, let us say, certain other writers, when you go to Avasthi and Maheshwari, they've also borrowed it, right? But you get to Bardhan's definition. Okay, when you think of non-Western definitions of public administration, right? When you take of various Western scholars who are more focused on non-Western tradition of public administration, right? Montgomery, Esman, and likewise there's comparative PubAd theorists, there are developmental theorists, Weidner, and even Riggs to an extent. Uh, I don't say Weber. Weber is not. Weber is more of industrially. But yes, when you think of certain other people and their definitions of public administration, it reflects more or less the you can say the understanding of a very narrow perspective of public administration, that it is involved in development process, it is involved in execution of laws, it is involved in this, and it is involved in that. Now, Wilson, the father of public administration, right, who is more concerned with the legal perspective of, the people say the juridical, the legal perspective brought by Wilson, right? Good now, the legal perspective brought by, but that is what we fail to comprehend, right? Now, this is an interpretation of certain Indian writers. Right? Talk about Fadia and Fadia, fine. Sharma Sadhana has written a good book, no doubt. Igno is also like a totally borrowed from the Western scholars, right? So when we think of these writers, fine, Hoshiar Singh, there are so many other writers who have talked about it, fine, Nunki Basu, so Prasad and Prasad. So when you think of them, now according to them, the definition, the juridical perspective that Wilson brings, that Wilson for the first time conceives that yes, we have to implement PubAd, and PubAd is more of an implementing part. So we have to, let us say, think of public administration as merely an entity which is implementing the laws made by the political masters. Right? Let us take it that way. But the logic is that the laws are made beforehand. Who make the laws? The politicians, the political system, right? The legislature. The laws are made, fine, in a totally different compartment, implemented by a totally different compartment. Now, this was more of a juridical approach of Wilson, right? Let us say if we take more of a narrow perspective, that what is PubEd? PubEd is the executive part implementing the law. But when we move ahead now, that is Wilson, Goodenow, they bring the dichotomy, and they talk about PubEd as two parts. PubEd as study of the other part. Government has having two parts. One which makes laws, the government, the political system. One which implements laws. Now we take it as two separate parts. Now when we go further, and when we think of evolution of public administration, people like Waldo come, people like Simon come, and they start questioning this proposition. And people like Michael Harmon, who talks about ethics in bureaucracy, they start questioning this. Frederick Feiner debate, that is very famous. Carl Frederick and Hermann Feiner, that's very popular debate. They start questioning this. That is it possible? Let us think in that way. Is it possible, and that the person, right, who is driving also owns the car, right? We see, try to understand my logic. Our lecture, our purpose here is to obviously simplify everything. And PubEd is a mass subject. It was a mass subject. People take it that way. UPSC, civil services, is a mass preparation. It is not a British civil service. It is not for the elites. It is for everyone who has the ability to think, who has the ability to learn things and write. Right. So imagine, can I say if somebody is driving a car, he's a driver, right? But at the same time, the driver might be the owner. So when you say, are you a good driver? We are not indicating at your profession. We are indicating at your ability to drive the car, right? But that does not rule out the possibility of the person owning the car. So if I say administrators implement, can I also say that administrators may be making also? Now that was the debate. In a simple way, I have tried to make you understand that there is no compartment. And so the entire perspective that there is a compartment was ruled out, right? So from here starts the actual takeoff of the study of public administration. That whether it is a legal juridical perspective, whether it is only related to the implementation, right? And who can implement? Is implementation something, a unique skill which is very different from what the political system does? Right? Does implementation require something very different, right? Something totally dissociated from what is being done, what is being made, right? So from here starts the actual domain, the discussion of public administration. So you can understand that way, that how you think of the folklore, how you think of the tales, the smaller tales and things, the public administration can be understood that way. We have to run a society. Okay, we have to run a society. Why we have to run a society? Because society cannot go on an auto mode. Why it cannot go? Because there is diversity in human behavior. Right? There are groups, there are communities, and not everyone has common consensus. Not everyone has common perceptions. Even they have some common belief systems. Their individual needs, their individual perspectives cannot be ruled out. So how we make sure that all these people remain, intact, constructive, meaningful to this society? Now, this is what the debate is. So we'll take the debate further. This will be a series because today was more or less the first class, so I'm not taxing you with a lot of technical aspects. Tomorrow, we'll continue with this particular perspective, that what exactly is the domain of PubEd, what is the study of public administration. So keep hooked to our channel. Fine, we'll talk about so many other things, and don't make learning a burden. It is a fun. Fine, it is something very natural to you, as we all are human beings. It is very natural to all of us. We have been given an intellect, we have been given brains, we have been given analytical ability, and that is why we have to think, we have to understand. Okay, you have to know the ecology, the environment in which we are living, and then we have to start questioning it. The moment we start doing it, fine, any subject, any optional, any exam becomes very simple, right? So I believe that all of you are thinking beings. If I tell you to do something, you won't do it just because I'm telling you, just because someone else is telling you. Okay, just because someone is a UPSC topper, even that doesn't matter, right? So every year there are different toppers, they have different subjects, they have different perspectives. Only one thing is common, is that they are motivated. Fine, they know the right direction. Okay, sometimes they have fought for it themselves. Sometimes they got people who could give them, right? So we will try to do that. Okay, we'll start with public administration as a subject, its origin. Fine, the debates on public administration, why public administration was defined in so many ways, and why should it be ever defined. Like Waldo says, okay, one line definition of public administration is mental paralysis then enlightenment. Mosher, it's best not to define public administration. Why is it so? So we'll go into the background, yes, tomorrow, into the history. Okay, we'll go into the story of public administration. You take it that way. It is a story of public administration. If you know the story well, fine, and you can script it properly, okay, you're going to get marks. Nobody can stop you. Thank you very much for your time. Keep listening to us. Okay, get hooked to our channels or whatever, fine, and you'll not regret. Thank you so much.